Okay, welcome everybody. And thank you for attending our debate. A music event called Elvis Has Finally Left the Building, Bridging Ethno-Racial Boundaries in Popular Music in Rotterdam and Beyond. My name is Pauwke Berkers, Assistant Professor of Sociology of Arts and Culture at the Department of Arts and Culture Studies at Erasmus University, and I will moderate this debate. Before my co-moderator Julian, who's standing there, we'll further introduce the topic of this debate, so why Elvis, what are boundaries. Let me just say a few words on the debate and why we organized this. So why this debate? Well, first of all, race and ethnicity are highly debated issues in contemporary Dutch society. I actually found a Metro this morning where another Zwarte Piet article appeared, and actually right now Black Piet is being discussed in another venue here in Rotterdam. Highly discussed topic on colonization and racism. Second, Rotterdam is a hyper-diverse city in which the Dutch majority is expected to become a minority in 2020. Yet, Rotterdam is also the city where populism in Dutch politics started with the rise of Pim Fortuyn. And finally, a recent government study showed that we increasingly live separate lives. We increasingly live segregated lives, basically on education, and people from different educational backgrounds with different levels of education don't really talk to each other anymore, don't mingle that much anymore. And this is something which might be worrisome in some extent. And we feel, maybe naively so, but we try to stay naive in that respect, that music might bring people together. So, what do we like to achieve with this debate? Well, actually, maybe a bit of what that other Elvis has referred to, peace, love, and understanding. Sounds maybe a little bit hippie-like, but we would like to have these experts from the field share their experiences with us about the role of race and ethnicity in music. But also we have a few academics here who can enlighten us a little bit on these issues, theorize a little bit on these issues in an understandable manner. And we instructed them carefully to make it understandable to everybody, while we're not underestimating your intelligence. So yes, we really hope that you will learn something tonight. And maybe that sounds a little bit old-fashioned, but that's sometimes what we are as teachers. Even though we are fully aware that race and ethnicity are difficult and contentious topics, we do feel that the evening would be most productive if we do it together with you, your audience. And with you actively, but also constructively and respectfully discussing among each other these topics which we will address during this evening. And we will try to take the edge of the seriousness of this debate, while not being not serious anymore, with some humor and some reflexivity. And let me start maybe a little bit egocentrically with myself. In the description of the debate we included the question, is your music taste racist? Of course it was a bit of a trick to catch your attention, but of course I wondered myself, asked myself that question, right? And of course I wouldn't consider my music taste to be racist. As one scholar said, there's a lot of racism, but there are very few racists. However, when we started distributing flyers, we aimed at Rotan, Witte de Wit, Worm, and we noticed that we unconsciously targeted a very specific audience, white, highly educated. That's what most data shows, what kind of people go to these venues, right? Yet the symposium is about bridging these boundaries. So we had to practice a little bit what we preached. Soon I realized myself I don't have any Cape Verdean friends. So I asked a former student, where should I put these flyers to reach a more diverse audience? And she gave me an extensive list of Cape Verdean hair salons to visit, because she said these were the promotional hotspots where I should go. And I also caught myself thinking I had absolutely no idea that this music scene actually existed to that extent, and where these places where these things happened, right? So is my music style and my lifestyle and music taste racist? I don't think so. Is my lifestyle and music taste unconsciously structured around segmented ethno-racial lines? Definitely, as this example showed. I wasn't aware of this, and I focused myself on these specific venues. Does it make me a bad person? That's up for you to decide. So on this behalf, I would like to thank Ilona, who helped me with this, for discovering these new things in Rotterdam, which I didn't really know much about. And we hope that you as an audience will also extend your horizon a little bit and critically think about your own role in these processes, right? Without forgetting, of course, to dance to the great band we've booked. So to paraphrase Emma Goldman, if I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your debate.
Yeah. So, okay. Here, this is yours.
I made a mess.
Yeah, you made a mess. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for being here. Yeah, welcome on behalf of me as well. So my name is Julian Schaap. This evening has rather uncreatively received the same name as our research project called Elvis has finally left the building. And this is followed by a line of complicated sociology speak, so I won't use that now. In this 5-year research project, we researched the relationship between rock music and whiteness. And so why rock music is such a white music scene, both on stage and off stage. So that's what we're doing right now. Exactly one of the topics we're going to discuss tonight. So as announced by Pauwke before we start, I will, as a sort of a teacher, introduce you to the most important concepts that we encounter when we study race, ethnicity, and its relationship with music. So, although we usually use the term ethno-racial interchangeably, there is a difference between the two concepts. So first, it is important to note that both race and ethnicity are social constructions. That means that whatever values we attach to someone being white, black, Asian or Turkish, we ourselves created these values. In other words, people are not born with these aspects, but are born into them. Think of your parents, social surroundings, nationality, education, and so on. We construct these values together. The difference between race and ethnicity is that our conceptualization of race is based on physical, or what we usually call phenotypical aspects of people. In other words, people are born with certain racial signifiers, and of course the most well-known of that is your skin color. Ethnicity differs from race in the sense that it's completely about cultural traits, so it has nothing to do with skin color. This means that ethnicity is a pure social construction that only exists in our collective minds and thus also in our individual minds. Your ethnicity is shaped by your language, your religion, national origin, but also by the music you listen to, or the music you grow up with. And that's of course why we're here tonight. So for example, the Indian ethnicity is partly shaped by Bollywood films and music, whereas the Netherlands, in the Netherlands we know volksmuziek, and everything that happens in Volendam basically is part of the Dutch ethnicity. And I see some people shaking their heads. That shows again that something like ethnicity is indeed a social construction that we can shape and reshape by altogether saying that's not part of Dutch identity. Pauwke also talked about boundaries and bridges, another set of concepts. In sociology, we use these concepts to see how people implicitly and explicitly create boundaries or borders between groups to see who's in and who's out. We can all remember, I think, this behavior from high school, right? You always make groups and then you know who's in and who's out. But this is not something that you stopped doing when you grew up. What this means is that it means that when you walk into a metal bar with your gabber outfit on, or an urban rap venue with your leather motor jacket full with metal patches, sorry for the metal references, you're revealing that there's a boundary between you and the group you walk in on. But of course, that isn't the only thing that's happening. The moment you walk into that bar, you're also maybe trying to bridge that, and that's exactly what we are interested in as well. What we can say about popular music is that it can both function as a bridge between mainstream society and ethnic immigrant communities, for instance by cultivating and understanding and repairing stereotypes, but it can also form a boundary, so a marker of your own ethnic or mainstream identity. So what's Elvis doing here? Of course, lots of people said, I don't know why this is called Elvis has finally left the building. Well, historically, rock and roll was a distinctly black music genre. So think of Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Fats Domino. The first rock and rollers were black. In a racially segregated United States of the 1950s, it was frowned upon for white people to listen to rock and roll music because it was made by black people and it was listened to by black people, Afro-Americans. But of course the music was very good and people wanted to listen to it. So it was the director of Sun Studios that you maybe know, Sam Phillips, who prophetically said that if I could find a white man with the Negro sound and the Negro feel, I would be a millionaire. That was the guy who discovered Elvis Presley, who together he became a millionaire, with a group of other white rock and rollers took over the rock scene and washed it white. We call this whitewashing, and we also know this as the Elvis effect. Elvis went into the building, and our question is, has he left? So it was because of this that when white rapper Eminem rose to fame in the late 1990s, the predominantly black hip-hop scene was afraid of a second Elvis effect, but which did not take place in the end. I think we can all agree on that. But how much has changed for rock music? So if I can pose a question, how many black or non-white rock musicians can you know who are not sitting here? Any ideas?
Lenny Kravitz.
Lenny Kravitz.
TV on the radio.
TV on the radio.
Rat Key.
Rat
Key. All black. Young
All
kids.
black.
Rocking
Cool.
you out, man.
But
Mute the music.
Rudeboy knows all bands.
Not really.
I heard
But
Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix. So,
Death.
yeah.
1972 Death.
True. Bad Brains.
Proto Punk, first one.
But we have a very informed audience here. But thank you. The idea is that usually it's about Jimi Hendrix, Block Party, Lenny Kravitz, etc., and that's basically it. So that's why we're here tonight. Oh, we can discuss rock. I'm not going into that. Okay, so without further ado, what's the plan tonight? So we've separated the evening into three teams that deal with three sides of music. The artist, the audience, and gatekeepers. Gatekeepers are the label, industry, etc. For each team, we'll introduce you with two panel members to talk about this topic. And because we have so much to discuss and so little time, Pauwke and I will moderate this debate. And of course, you, the audience, you should be a part of this debate. So if you have questions, please raise your hand. We don't want it to be too noisy so no one understands each other anymore. We have microphones here, so please let me know when you want to say something. So there we go.
Interesting this. Okay, let me find my papers. Two academics working together. Co-creation, not a success. So for the first part of the discussion, we focus on the artist. Of course, it's a bit of ideotypical, to use an academic term, to distinguish. There's a lot of overlap in this process, and you will notice this quite soon. We want to talk about the role of race and ethnicity in music making and how this affects careers of people. We have two speakers, which I'll introduce. We watch a clip and then they come on stage. The first speaker is Joe Haynes, senior lecturer in sociology at the University of Bristol. Her main research interests are focused on issues of racialization and the relationship between music and identity. She's author of the book Music Difference and the Residue of Race. The second speaker is Ilias Boudellah. He's a Utrecht-based rock musician who is playing in a band called Marock&Roll and who released their album Take a Look in My World in 2011. Before I invite him on stage, we're just first going to watch a small clip. So let me first ask the audience, and I'm just looking behind the first line here. What did we just see? How would you talk about this? What happened here? Anybody? Don't be scared.
Yeah, it's the same as like talking about a good joke. We just saw it, so everybody knows that and that.
You think so?
Yeah, explain.
Okay. Then you tell me a little bit about your own experience with this, if you can relate to this, and maybe we can do this by showing a quote. You did an interview with the Volkskrant in 2011, and one of the quotes that was picked up on the newspaper was, "A long-haired Dutch Moroccan who makes rock music is about as rare as a swallow in the winter." Here in the Netherlands, rock is a wild style of music. And then the reporter says, Ilias wants to change this, and you say, apparently, I want to put it bluntly, I want to infiltrate that white scene.
Yeah, true. I want to make a lot of money. I want to be a big artist, so I need to infiltrate in the scene. First of all, thank you for having me here, and excuse me if my English is not on a level that everyone can understand me. It's the first time I speak publicly in English.
You do fine.
I can relate in two ways with this clip. I can relate myself with Cartman, because I have a lot of Moluccan friends, Molukkers. And as I say to my friends, all Moluccans know how to play music. All Moluccans I know play guitar, can sing, can drum, can do anything. And in the second way, as a Moroccan rock musician, how moet ik het zeggen? People don't, when I say to people I'm a musician, they always think I'm a rapper, or I'll make R&B music or that type of stuff. And when I show them I'm a rock musician, it's like, yeah, that's, how can I say that? They're in shock. They don't, ze verwachten het niet. They don't expect it, because they never seen a Moroccan rock. But I need to say, there's a lot of rock and roll music in Morocco. It's just the Moroccan people here in the Netherlands don't listen to the rock music, because there's two types of Moroccans. The Moroccans in Morocco and the Moroccans here in the Netherlands are two very different people.
Do you have any idea why they don't listen to rock music here?
My own experience is, when I was a little child, my mom used to listen to shabby music. That's Moroccan music from the area where I come from, Tilon. And we didn't buy CDs, we didn't listen to the radio. It's just when I turned 16 and discovered TMF and discovered the Backstreet Boys, that's how I started singing. And that time I started to discover my own music.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Rudeboy, Urban Dance Squad, where I was a big fan of.
Oh wow.
And that's how I actually, with the Urban Dance Squad and Rage Against the Machine and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, that's how I got introduced in the rock music, because I actually hated rock music. I hated everything about it. I hated the screaming, the hard guitars, because it's just that moment when I saw musicians play in front of me. That was the first time I fell in love with rock music. So actually, there's a lot of Moroccan rock musicians I got to know along the way. Now, so it's not that there's no Moroccan rock musicians or black rock musicians. There are.
They're not as visible as...
Yeah. To that, because in 2011, when we finished the recordings of our first album, we sat on the table with Universal Music for a record deal. We didn't take, because his first question was, do you want... they wanted me to put more hip-hop in the music that I made. They told me, you can write your own things, but you need to work with a co-writer. So, to make it more hip-hoppy. And I love hip-hop. I really love hip-hop, but I don't want to make hip-hop. Because I don't want to be put in that stereotype. But people do that for you.
That's something we will also discuss in the section of the gatekeepers. Maybe a last question for Ilias. How do you see your own role in maybe trying to promote this music among people, or how do you see your role in maybe battling these stereotypes?
Just make good music. That's the answer. Just make good music and people will accept you. just like they accepted Lenny Kravitz. But I want something off my heart, because I want to say that, why not, I hate Elvis Presley. That's what I wanted to say, because rock and roll, just like you said, rock and roll is black, and all the songs Elvis sang were stolen from black musicians. They didn't put on the radio because they were black. So I just wanted to say that. I wanted to know now.
So this is a bit of a, in time scene, a bit of a late Elvis call for an Elvis boycott. It's a bit too
No,
late.
not a boycott,
but-
because Elvis is a great singer, a great dancer. I can't dance like that. But if only he gave credits to the people who he sang the songs from, but he didn't. That's something that is bothering me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll save questions for later as well. Of course, we're not here to promote Elvis in any way. We're just figuring out whether he left the building and maybe apologized on the way, out. Sorry. Okay, so we talked about the artist, we talked with an artist, but as you already figured out, there's another artist among us. He was already referred to quite many times. So we know him from next to many other projects for his work with Battles of 1977, of which a new record might be coming out, I read today. You can explain more about that later.
Well, I might not, but...
Oh, maybe. The Phantom 4 and the Argido.
Oh yeah, they're good guys.
And Junkie XL, but of course we know him most well from the Urban Dance Squad, the band that basically gave Rage Against the Machine 110% of its influences. But before we invite him onto the stage, for all of you who don't know him, let's have a quick look at what he has said and done in the past.
No.
Je moet weten voor wie je praat. Ik weet niet meer voor wie ik praat. Ik wil gewoon dingen terug hebben. Ik wil gewoon het gevoel hebben dat ik ergens thuis hoor. En niet dat gespleten shit. Heb ik niks aan. Ik heb altijd van rock'n'roll gehouden. Maar rock'n'roll heeft niet van mij gehouden. Iedereen denkt van, wanneer je muziek maakt, dat is toch, het gaat toch om de muziek? Ja, natuurlijk. Waarom dacht je dat ik muziek zou maken? Maar ik heb niet alleen met muziek te maken. Ik heb met mensen te maken die muziek luisteren. Ik heb met termen te maken als achterban. Criticus. Industrie. Dan hoe kun je mij vertellen dat ik alleen maar met muziek te maken heb? Die shit verscheurt me, dus mijn muziek verscheurt me. Van de orthodoxe rap-achterban niet eens begrijpt wat ik aan het doen ben. En daarom wordt dat mijn probleem. Want ik ben een echte rapper, maar zij denken dat it's too weird. Snap je? Dus het begrip wat ik heb voor het feit dat de zwarte gemeenschap zich zelf beschermt met deze nieuwe vorm van rock'n'roll, dat het niet naar andere niveaus wegvloeit, zoals wat ze noemen blank, wordt dat mijn probleem. Want
no retain 24-hour action. Be the business, get the good, get the beat, get the beat going synthesis. Trippin', go we go trippin'. Generate my body. Sippin' 40s, higher. Aliens give away up. In a fast lane.
Good evening, people. How are you? To reflect on this one. Oh, yeah, great. To reflect on this one, what you've seen. That was in a particular period. And no, I'm not really trying to chicken out on this one, but when people ask you questions on the particular, about certain topics, on the spot, with no time, with a lot of things on your mind, you mean well. And I meant well. If you would ask me the same questions, I would give you a different, even better answer. But in those days, there was a lot on my mind. I was always troubled, and therefore you got these things, but I will explain certain things. My name happens to be Patrick Ian Tilon, 25-1-64. That makes me 50 years, do the math. I was born in Suriname, in Paramaribo. My father is Melroy Cicero Tilon. My mother is Eunice Coleman Haling. They met each other because my father was the best artist in Suriname. Had a lot of women. This is a problem. He was young. He was black. So that's a problem. I kid. And my mother thought, well, I don't know what's wrong with this guy, but she was interested. She knew she was much older than him. But she fell for him till the point where in a particular society as Suriname, black people in general, they kind of listened to everything from R&B, rhythm and blues back then, Stones, Beatles, ska music, Wilson Pickett, Dave Clark 5, and so on. So when I was born, I saw my father, when I was 3 years old, I saw him on television. I saw him perform because in the house in the Hertogstraat was an up level with a balcony. I was basically always alone on the balcony unless my mother was there because she was the only one who guided me, a true angel, and she left way early. I might explain or might not. But when my father was there, he used to play in the Cosmo Beats. He was a lead singer. He was a bass player, playing the Hufner bass. He had the ideology of Paul McCartney, saying that the bass playing must be done in a particular way. Like the guitar lines, it should be a specific, different kind of story musically, but very important, almost like you have a second or a third lead guitar part. So I was brought up in that way. I saw my father perform and rehearse in the same house where I lived. I used to look all the time. I didn't even, because he basically neglected me, especially when he was working on his music. So I was standing, observing. Didn't know later on that maybe that might be one of the things that subconsciously I would take out. I don't know, but I studied that thing. So I was raised, I came home, I came from the Suriname when I was 5 years old, alone on a plane with a little paper. Take care of this kid, he travels alone. Dwelt with certain foster parents then in Belmemere in Amsterdam. Learned a lot about black people again, and white people. But my father raised me in a particular way when it came to music. You have to understand, my father made a lot of different music, and he was very open-minded. He used to play the Bee Gees and play songs of them, sing them, own ska songs, instrumentals, even the Shadows, Dave Clark 5. When I was listening, if I look back, I was immediately intrigued by what you consider the British invasion, especially these beat groups. So the Who, Dave Clark 5, Beatles, and all that stuff that I was mentioning, that attracted me. Of course, we knew Wilson Pickett and even James Brown and all that stuff, but I wasn't really focusing on that one. That is something pretty typical from my point of view. From, it might say something about my character. I was always involved in trying to absorb the things that were more interesting to my point of view. A lot of different drums. I love melodies. I love sing-along things, but in a particular way. I knew the box stops with the letter when I was really small. I knew the lemon drops made my green tambourine. which was really amazing to me, even at how young I was. So these things you take with you. When I started listening even more, I was asking my father about certain groups. He explained me about the Beatles, why they were this good, and the Stones. And there was no rivalry between the Beatles and the Stones in our house, so that's bullshit anyway. Yeah, that's for the people, you know. I kind of got absorbed immediately about what I call musical mayhem. It first started with, for instance, listening to Helter Skelter. Because Helter Skelter to me is the perfect form of mayhem. Danger, sexiness, interesting stuff. The problem with musical mayhem is once you got touched by it, you're gonna look for more mayhem. And that's what happened basically if I have to sum this all up. So by the time I listened to a lot of music, also by my nephews who had, one was living upstairs, basically ruling all the releases from heavy metal till Steely Dan. And the other one was more into Beatles, Uriah Heep, later on Motorhead. So you get that with you. You learn by your environment and the right people who expose you to particular sounds. You already are touched by that musical mayhem, so you're gonna do more. Because the other stuff is just plain right boring. Yeah, I can listen to Engelbert Humperdinck, but for a short while, you know? Then later on, the second thing that was very important in 1977, even though in 1975 and 76, this whole revolution, because it was a revolution, started in England called punk rock, and especially the British invasion, again, by the Sex Pistols and Mr. John Lydon, Johnny Rotten. At first, when I heard them as a youngster, I thought it was the end of the world. Because I thought, these things are way too weird, way too different. I guess three months later, I was completely different. And I immediately got absorbed later on in years by the specials, by listening first to Watching the Detectives by Elvis Costello. That particular little single was at a friend's house. So I figured, play it again, play it again. He didn't even know shit because he said, it's from my sister, but I like it. I said, I like it even more. And he had another single because the specials in those days had no record out except that single called Gangsters. I was listening constantly to that. Ask him to play it again. In 78, I started to call myself a Rudeboy because of that. I started in a French lesson. This girl in the back was talking to me. She heard my story. I was blabbering about specials, nothing else. She said, so you're a Rudeboy now, huh? I said, oh yeah, I'm a Rudeboy now. So it stuck. So that was very important to me, the Sex Pistols and the punk rock mentality, even though I wasn't a punk rocker because I became a Rudeboy and later on a skinhead. Yeah, it's pretty strange, but it's a fact. Then I started, obviously, I will take a big leap to when I started to see the Urban Dance Club. They asked me, this particular DJ comes up to me in a particular show where he was battling somebody out, but didn't have done his homework because the needle was jumping, and everybody, whole black surname in Amsterdam was booing him out. I said, this guy has balls. Because first of all, he's either an idiot or this guy simply got balls. Because he told me after rapping in his ear, and I hate rapping in somebody's ear because it's bullshit. But he was nagging me, and I said to myself, well, let him fucking stop this bullshit. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it like slow. And he grabbed a pen, and he said, you have to go to the free floor, the vrije floor, it's not there anymore, in a place called Utrecht. And you have to go through Hoofdkaterijnen and so on and so on. I thought this guy must be an idiot because I'm so embarrassed. It was really awful. But somehow I said to my girlfriend back then, a blonde girl, again, I saw this idiot, and he gave me this paper. He tells me to go this place, and you know what, I'm gonna do it. Even if it's nothing, I'm just gonna check this idiot out because then I'm sure he's an idiot. So I went and I saw these particular guys, individuals, and it stuck with me. I first kind of checked what they were doing. And immediately I had songs, so I was figuring out the particular musical atmosphere, if it would fit with the things I have in my arsenal. And it worked, but they didn't know. So after a while they asked me, and what do you think? I'm like, well, play that little jam back again. I have a song for it. It's called Struggle for Jive, so I did that. They just kind of rocked on and on and on, and other little elements I had, and I never went back. And then maybe the third experience started for me, because I came in this band, and what I've always felt about music was, to me, there was no color. Never. There was no color. But that was because of my dad. But he also told me, being in Holland, being at school, he said, you get better specialize yourself. And he was pretty skeptical about the fact that if he later figured out I was in bands, that wouldn't work. He said, this color is the thing that you have to basically specialize yourself more than a non-colored person, because it's like a prison. You're in disadvantage. So I said, whatever. Yeah, it sounds funny now. But no, it's funny. You can laugh. But he was in a way right, but I didn't know that even in the music world, people would look at your color. So another leap, because I could talk on and on about this. I'm writing this book. You have to wait for that. It's an idiotic book, but it's really a good thing. But when the Urban Dance Squad got signed, I want to mention a couple of things. First of all, Clive Davis. Later on in this, a couple of years ago, when I saw a band called Death, a black band by the Hackney brothers, and their visionary was Dave Hackney, who killed himself later on, but gave the master tape to his brothers and told them, keep it with you because it's going to be big. These particular people were black. In 1972, they had these songs. They loved The Who, they loved the Stooges, everything. I don't know if they really knew the Stooges by then, I'm not sure, but they loved hard music in that sense. These people would even come up to Clive Davis. First they went to the community. When they rehearsed in their house, the girls didn't like it because it was too loud. When they came to the idea to make a record, they went first to the black segments of recording, and these people, they didn't understand it till they find one. So they made that record with this guy and so on and so on. I'm not going to tell the whole story because obviously you might know this one, but this is interesting. The same Clive Davis got involved, and this Clive Davis guy, a nice guy by the way, who has no hair, but to give you the impression that he has hair, he put some shoe cream on it. Yeah. This guy, he saw them, or he heard them, talked with them, and said one thing though, you got to change the name. And they didn't, especially because Dave didn't want it. The rest you know. The same Clive Davis heard about us by a journalist who went to the head office of Arista back then, which is now Sony BMG. And he said to the journalist, tell me everything about the Urban Dance Squad. The Dutch journalist said to him, so, say what? He said, tell me everything about the Urban Dance Squad. What do you know about? So he said, well, and he started telling something. I'm not sure. I wasn't there. Later on, we got signed. But they also asked us to change the name because Urban Dance Squad didn't make no sense to certain people who think in categories. The urban sounds black or whatever. The dance is definitely sounding black. The squad, what do you mean? You're gonna go at war? Are you in a particular, and we said this is the name. This is the name. We will not change it. So don't even try, otherwise whatever. somehow they left us with that. Because later on they will try other tricks to kind of, you know, control or change it. I'm not saying this is racist. I'm saying that's the way they are. But when we were on the roll in the United States of America, even in Holland, I basically played for maybe 90%, 99% white people. Seldomly black. In the States, some black guys came. I loved it because, especially to them, I wanted to know that I noticed them and give them an extra tap on the back or whatever, and took time for them. Not because I didn't like the white people, of course not. But I felt it was my task to do so, to strengthen them. If they came all the way up to see us, then at least I have to give them the respect by saying, hey, thank you so much, because you're outnumbered here, and you still come to see us. So I gave that little thing. I was always good to people who did so much effort to see us. If they had no money, we let them in. The bouncers didn't like it, but who cares? So when we came in the urban dance school, we played and toured, we saw basically only white people. When Werner Reed, when I saw Living Color and 24/7 Spies somewhere in Rotterdam, or maybe The Hague, I'm not sure. Really? Anyway, I'm gonna make it short. I could talk on and on, but the thing is this. The color of skin is not even in my mind or in my heart, but it will be if you show me. And with the Rage Against Machine thing, it's simple. I love Rage Against Machine. With the first album, they exposed to me on this record on a particular venue called Concerto, if I'm not mistaken. No, Get Records. I first went to Get Records because they were more hardcore. They told me, Rudeboy, check this out. I said, okay. What do you think about it? When I heard the whole album, I said, well, it's good, but I did that 6 years ago. So the Urban Dance Squad has to blame themselves also to make it so difficult for themselves. Coming with Mental Floss for the Gone was completely off kilter, totally different than what we were used and supposed to do, and got our name in the underground circuit in Holland because we ruled everyone. I cannot help but think that every now and then certain people love it when black people do certain things by just trying to boycott them or saying, well, I don't want them to be that special. And especially with the Rage Against Machine thing, I saw white kids coming to me and say, and I'm not jealous, I'm just saying it's strange. If you know that we are the first, but you're still coming only with Rage Against the Machine and taking that as a stick to hit me, that's kind of strange. And that's what a lot of white people did to me. Even in Holland, I used to perform for a lot of white people. I always wonder why. Because in my heart, I have no color unless you make me feel that I have a color. Then you will find me on your tracks and tell you that I'm black. But a part of that, I have no color whatsoever.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was winging it, but
we have time for one question, maybe one very pressing question. I can't really see you because of the light, but does anyone have a question you want to ask now? I'm sure you will stick around afterwards as well.
And buy his book.
that will take a while, though.
Anyone who has a question or wants to know something?
There's
No?
a lot to say, actually, but I'm not sure.
Then we'll just continue. We'll keep the questions for the end. But thanks again, Patrick.
You're welcome.
Now we turn to the second theme, the audience. So that's you. We already heard a bit about this, but what role does the audience play in keeping boundaries in place or bridging them? So what is your role in all of this? For this, we invite, after watching the video, the following experts on stage. First, we have Karl Spracklen, who is a professor at Leeds Berkers University in the United Kingdom. He is an expert on leisure, whiteness, and metal music, and the latter both as a fan and an academic, I think. Then second, we have an expert from the field. She's called Miriam Leah Brenner. She's a musicology major from the University of Amsterdam, but is primarily known for her work in world music, also talked about already. She's both curator and booker with her company Kokako Music, and is now also presenting live dance music with an international touch through her Global Club Music Networks organization. But first we're going to watch a small excerpt from a documentary film. We looked at a fragment from the documentary called Afropunk, The Other Black Experience. This is called The Other Black Experience because the normal black experience should be hip-hop, that's the idea. So what we saw in the documentary in this excerpt is that these are black, non-white people who try to get into the punk scene. They do want to relate to punk, they love punk music, they want to join concerts, but they feel very black, basically, in this very white scene. So Karl Spracklen over here is an expert on whiteness. So what I want to ask first is maybe you can... He is white. He's an expert by knowing, you know, by experience. So please enlighten us, as I don't know what it is. What is whiteness exactly, Karl?
Okay, in my research, essentially, there are two ways in which everybody comes to any leisure space or any leisure activity, like music. We all choose the things that we do because, for us, they feel an important part of our identity. That's why we all like certain music, certain sports, certain drinks. But then there are limits, and we saw in the documentary that there are some kinds of identity, some kinds of belonging, some kinds of community that are only there for certain people. And in what sociologists call late modernity, and the period of time that we're living in now, I think people in the West or the global North who essentially still have a huge amount of power, use that power to keep people they don't like out of the mainstream. So whiteness is a political construct. You don't actually have to kind of look white to be white.
Okay, thank you. Is this working? Yes? No? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good to know. So Miriam, you have many encounters with the world music scene. We already talked a little bit about this, but you would expect world music, lots of diversity, lots of backgrounds from people. It comes from all over the world, obviously. But what you encounter in your daily programming life is fairly different. So maybe you can enlighten us about that as well.
I hope I can enlighten people. That would be wonderful. It might be good to talk about the word world music just for a second, just if you go back into history where that word actually came from. It popped up as a marketing tool, actually, to sell music or to give voice to music, to give a place to music that wasn't represented, as you said, in the global North America, the white part of the world. Essentially using their power, actually, to promote this music that wasn't accessible or wasn't playing live at all. So at that time it was a tool for integration, you could say. Now if you fast forward to now, about 30 years later, everybody's wondering, do we still need this word? Does it help us at all? Does it help artists who are not white at all? And my personal opinion, having worked in this world music industry for about 7 years now, is that it's actually more a tool of segregation than it is integration. And just a very, very quick summary, if you look at world music venues or festivals that portray themselves as world music, mostly do attract a white audience, middle class, higher educated, and as the Dutch people will know as geitenwolle sokken. So that's a certain class of people, like an average age of 55 plus year olds. And the world music industry is facing a large problem that they don't have enough audience anymore, or not an audience that's willing to pay, not enough color and not enough youth. So there's a lot going on just in that word.
Okay, thank you. Maybe what I was thinking about then, your discussion about whiteness as well, and what you encounter in the world music scene, is then there a sense of entitlement by white people for this world music, because you see in the example we use, for instance, with Eminem, with hip hop, that there was really a scare. People were afraid that Eminem, white people, would take over hip hop as well. Has that ever happened in world music? And is there a problem with this idea that white people can basically listen and make all music that there is, whereas non-white people have more difficulty sort of infiltrating white scenes?
Do you mean that other artists, that non-white artists, are scared that whites will take their music? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry? Comment from the audience?
Can I?
Yes, sure. Maybe you can.
Because we haven't even started, so.
It's irritating me that you say black people are afraid of it.
Okay.
Because Eminem. There were a lot of there were a lot of white rappers in the scene. I don't know, the Irish guy with his green shirt and always boxing in his video clips. I forget names.
House of Pain? You mean House of Pain?
House of Pain, exactly. Thank you. Thank you, colleague. There were a lot of Ice Baby or whatever. There were a third base. I bet my colleague can name a lot more. He's better in names.
Black teenagers.
Exactly. But Eminem got the okay from black people. You understand? And when he got the okay, white people were on him. So we were not afraid he became Elvis. No, white people they needed this Elvis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Maybe. Why did he get the okay from?
He's an okay rapper.
What the role of Dr. Dre?
Can I say something?
Yeah. Dr. Dre played a role, of course. Dr. Dre is the crowner of rappers.
Yeah. First of all, what's also very important is that he did the field work the way it's supposed to be. As a fanatic, meaning he loved the music, the form of music. He put effort there, heart, grit, everything in it. Second, he took the right insight. So he went particular to the right entrance, Dr. Dre. And everybody respected Dre, and still, that was a power move in my point of view. And from that moment on, he kept on working on a heavy bass that people will respect him. And he had only problems when he came to black radio stations. They are, especially for him, it was a main problem. If you look at certain video footage of Eminem, you will see him simulating, or even, I'm not sure if the footage is real, but at least simulating a fight, a battle between these people because they disagreed about him being a white guy and his blackness and so on, and them being a black radio station knowing everything about real rap. But the fact is, a lot of black rappers, very famous, they said Eminem is legit. Because he got skills, he had the heart, and he was courageous, and he did the field work. It's really simple. When you do these things, sooner or later, you will get there. And he was extremely talented, so they couldn't fucking stop him. And that's why Eminem became Eminem. But it's interesting because black radio stations, most of the times, they give you problems all the times. Because when I was in the Urban Dance Squad, and I had to do not an interview, in a conference room from Arista, more than 50 people were there, also black radio people. And they asked me a question. I had to answer all these questions. They had all questions for me. And I was a spokesperson, and one said, "Rudeboy, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What about black radio?" And my A&R was pretty nervous, thinking, "Oh shit, what he's gonna say?" And I said, "Yeah, what about it?" And he said, "Yeah, thank God." I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "What about it?" Because we do not care. We are the Urban Dance Squad. If every black person or any black radio station understands us, go for it, because we love it when you play us. If you don't like it, then don't play it. But it was, in those days, a very important thing. Black radio stations always wanted to know who you are or what your intention is to do. And in my point of view, I'm not sure if it changed, but it's pretty interesting, actually. But Eminem, then again, always had problems with black radio stations, certain black radio stations. Yeah.
Okay, thanks again, Patrick, and a very good comment indeed. Maybe as a question for the audience, we're talking about the audience, of course. Who here, who is non-white, ever had sort of a strange feeling when they walked into a white scene? Sort of, yeah? And who, the other way around? Are there white people here who really felt like it's really difficult, yeah? And what kind of scene did you walk in?
For me?
Yeah?
Well, the first time was, it was felt like a Cape Verdean bar, and I think I was the only white guy in the bar. And I loved his music. It was on the, I think it was part of the Westkruiskade. And I came in through a friend who's Cape Verdean, and he introduced me, so I felt okay. But a long time when you enter, you're the only white person there. Yeah, it's like stepping in another world. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And there was someone else, a few people. Nope, the other way around. We know your experience. The other way around? Sure, Karl.
I think this is my point I was trying to make about the inequity of the kind of power relationships between whiteness and blackness and belonging and community. Of course, black people can be racist, black people can be exclusionary, absolutely. But it's the kind of the bigger systems and the bigger structures at work that make white racism and black racism different things. Even though it might kind of hurt the person suffering the racism, it is different. And being white brings privilege. Being a man brings privilege. Being middle class brings privilege. In Britain, whether you say class, like I do because I'm from the north and I'm vaguely working class, or whether you say class, which is how we speak it down south.
I'd like to ask you here, Oscar, how did you feel by the end of the night? Because if it's one thing when you're talking about audiences, and especially mixing audiences, which I should emphasize in the world music, it's not exclusively white or anything at all. Predominantly it is in these venues that portray themselves as world music. So my question is, how did you feel by the end of the night, being included or not included, being part of the music? Because I think that's where, you know, the magic happens in the end, like we were saying, as long as it's good music. And it's music about the heart, and you share that. So I'm just wondering how you felt by the end of the night, dancing a little.
It was like jumping in cold water. So when you get in, finally you start swimming, finally you get out and you feel great.
So you had goosebumps, but it was refreshing in the end. And
of course, yeah.
Good.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, everyone in the audience as well. We're going to the third and last theme. I think we have to reset the laptop very quickly, so this is a quick intermezzo. On stage, 2 more panel members will join, so you can stay there. I think we have chairs, extra chairs that should be somewhere. We're going to locate them.
Magically.
There's one over there.
Can we talk a little bit in the meantime?
Sure.
Great.
Well, it's almost finished.
Is it almost?
So.
No, just a quick little remark. We were talking about before about these venues, and it's interesting to see that sometimes when you have a certain band, it depends so much on where you program and how the concert is marketed, to whom and to who you keep in mind, because sometimes it can be a more white, middle-aged audience, and then you have it, for instance, here in Rotterdam, and you can have an entirely different crowd. So it's interesting to see how those things vary from place to place, and especially how you just, it is about the marketing, just how you put it out there. And that especially within a younger generation now, that you see that it's so much more mixed than in the geitenwolle soccer culture of 55 plus. Not that they're not open to it, but it's just interesting to see what Julian said in the short introduction, especially in the more dance music that's deeply rooted in all these different cultures of the world, more electronic, live electronic, that the mix is so much more intense. So I think that the world music scene is finally opening up to that. So it's also, different generations bridging those gaps finally.
All right. The last section we do, and we already talked a little bit about it. Ilias addressed already the role of gatekeepers. Julian talked a little bit about the Elvis effect, which is basically gatekeeper driven. The fact is obviously that music genres do not simply reflect ethno-racial groups, but are actively structured around these racial divisions, or in some cases. And we also saw the example that gatekeepers really have particular ethno-racial expectations of what you should produce if you are part of a particular ethno-racial group. I think your example about you should include more hip-hop is exactly what we were talking about. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, and I would like to invite two people on the floor, Linde Murugan and Conchitta Bottse. Linde Murugan is a PhD candidate at Northwestern University in the United States in the Screen Cultures program. Her dissertation explores how US Cold War entertainment television was central to visualizing and refashioning a global community of racial diversity that was predicated on imperialism. You can ask her in the break what that exactly means. I do the same as I write my own biographies. Conchitta Bottse has years of working experience in the culture field in Rotterdam. She works for hip-hop-minded companies like the Hip Hop House, the notorious IBE. She's currently working as day programmer for Rotterdam Beats, a great festival which actually starts not this weekend but next weekend, so all go there. Please come on stage, and then we're going to show a short clip. And after the clip, Linde is going to contextualize what we just saw using the concept of strategic essentialism.
The racial pride was back in effect. We had black kids going to Dr. Ben Yuckinen lectures. We were spending our money to go see Farrakhan speak as opposed to going to a strip club. This is where we were. The most coveted article of clothing was a historically black college or university sweater. We were motivating children towards positive attitudes and lifestyles. And when Rodney King got the beating, heads responded properly. Fast forward to our day. Sean Bell is shot 50 times in the street in New York by police officers. #1 song on the radio, Like a Lollipop. Nobody do nothing. Nobody respond to nothing. Trust me. Just like the brother, I believe it was JT, the bigger figure, who said that the label executives came to him and said, yo, brother, we need you talking about guns and whores. You know what I mean?
That's right.
That happens. I've been in those meetings with management and had to ask me, is what you're saying really what you believe, so that we'll know how to market you properly? You know what I mean? This happens. Young Buck on his album, he has a song on his album that talks about police terrorism. The label said absolutely not. Jimmy Iovine said absolutely not. You cannot put that record on the album because it might create an atmosphere that might put police officers' lives in danger.
Right.
So they took the record off, but they let him keep the other 14 songs on the album that talked about killing black youth. So this is what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with a circumstance or consequence of history. You know what I mean? The environment that we're embedded in puts us in a situation where we feel we have to maneuver and play the game and water our message down. You know what I mean? But no, what happened was they intentionally shifted the paradigm to get us exactly where we are right now.
So what you just saw was a clip from 2009, and that's MC Wise Intelligent, who he was born in Canada, but mainly has kind of lived in like Newark, New Jersey. But he's speaking there at a conference in 2009 in Chicago, which is where I'm from. And right there, I just kind of wanted to give an example of basically, you know, I think a lot of people throw around the idea that, oh, hip hop has become evacuated of like an anti-authoritarian politics, but then kind of give, you know, this isn't just because people don't care, because that is far from the truth, obviously, but it's actually there are industrial pressures and the idea of wanting, like, what kind of hip hop sells and the way that the industry has shaped that. So what I wanted to talk about just really briefly, what strategic essentialism is, basically is the idea that this is an idea that actually Gayatri Spivak, who's a post-colonial scholar, came up with, and Stuart Hall used it, talk about black popular culture, what is the black and black popular culture. So this idea basically is that, you know, as we've already talked about tonight, you know, not all black people do have hip-hop music, not all black people like hip-hop music, but hip-hop at some point, at least, you know, the MC Wise Intelligent was talking about the early 90s, talking about examples about hip hop was voicing an anti-authoritarian politics, about talking about police violence, of talking about the lack of resources in urban environments, and to some degree, people are going to, gravitate towards this forum to voice their political protest if they're not being given other outlets. But what happens is then when the industry wants to co-opt it, strategic essentialism, which is supposed to be a temporary thing, becomes a kind of an industrial essentialism, where then, blackness is stereotyped as, instead of anti-authoritarian, it's just violence. It's violence directed towards other black youth, misogyny, talking about like the drug trade. So these kinds of ways in which, a certain sort of stereotype is manufactured, and how that creates a very, it's not productive. All right.
Conchitta, can you react on what Linde just said, and also elaborate a little bit about the role race and ethnicity plays in your work? I know it's a big question.
Yeah, it's a really big question. We've talked earlier, so she kind of explained to me before. If I look at this whole thing in my point of view from work, I organize an urban-based beach festival. So what that actually means is that you don't say it's a hip hop festival, you don't say it's a dance festival. We try to make it as broad as possible, and we did that on purpose to make sure we don't exclude anything. Because of course you will always have that, but we want to take the biggest approach on that. And the thing is, if you call something a hip hop festival, what we get as an organization is, okay, so why you're programming this EDM act, or why are you doing this, and why? That's not hip hop. No, I know, but that's not what we're trying to do. So we're trying to step outside of the boxes and just make a program that's broad and accessible to a bigger audience.
2 questions.
Yes.
Does it work? And B, the festival was sponsored by Buma.
Not anymore.
No, it was. It was. Is there a role of the sponsor in this? Do they have an opinion on this, or interfere, or have an idea about?
To be perfectly honest, there was. And with the big organization, with Buma taking a step back, it gives us as organizers some freedom, because we can now make choices that we want, and we're not directed by the big company that says you have to book this because it will sell tickets. You have to book this act because it will attract this crowd. We can decide what we want to book, and what we can make up for ourselves what crowds we want to attract. And that's why we want to make it broad, so we can make it not exclusive for just one particular group. So it works now that Buma is gone. They were a great help, of course, financially, definitely. But the thing is, if you're working from your heart and with this thing that you want to make an event that will help a lot of people, we're experiencing now that we don't have any more boundaries. So we can do whatever we want, actually. And there will always be some small things, because Buma is still some kind of involved. But then again, we have gained a lot of freedom from it.
I would also direct the attention to the audience. You might have a lot of questions. We now have 4 people on stage. So anybody who wants to pose a question to one of the speakers here. I see an eye.
Yeah, hello. I don't have a question for someone in particular, but I grew up in Friesland, in a small village. So, and back then I only had public television. So, and I grew up so that it was not easy to listen to or to get involved with other music. But do you think that it's because we're all like 20, 30 years old, or maybe older? But now you have, of course, kids growing up and they have access to all kind of music. So I was thinking, is it not just that the problem is gonna solve itself in the future? Of a problem that is separation, that there be more bridges instead of boundaries.
Yeah, Karl.
I think the internet is a fantastic piece of technology that just tells people to watch the same old shit that people used to watch 20 years ago. I don't think there is a kind of an extension of taste. Despite people having more choice, people just end up listening to the same music that their friends are listening to.
It's still, I believe, it's still about filters. So exactly, there's so much out there, but where do you start? You're going to start at some point because a friend told you, and that friend's probably from the same background that you have already. Myself, if I look at how I grew up, you know, my mom would play all sorts of European folk music. My dad would play jazz and rock. So I think, in essence, that you're formed very much from the direct vicinity, the people in your vicinity. And I still think, unfortunately, that there's always going to be gaps and things to bridge, which is the beauty, because there's so much out there to learn, to discover, and enjoy together. And I think internet's probably going to make it easier that if you do know about something, you can actually access it. Yeah.
I think people need. I think people need to relate with someone. I never found a rock singer or something I can relate with. It was all dreadlocks and leather jackets, and in my culture you can't do that. So I never found an artist I can relate with. I think that's the biggest problem. If my little brother hates rock music, hates everything I do, really everything I do with rock music, but when I rap he likes it. I think that's the issue. You need to relate with someone.
I agree. I have the same thing. I also come from a small village, and I was one of like the 2 black kids in my class. And I discovered that the music that was around me, that wasn't for me. So what I did, as soon as I could, I'd buy a train ticket, get the hell out. And once I got my driver's license, that was it. I went everywhere, went to Germany, France, Belgium, anywhere I could go, find things that would fit me, that I could relate to. And the funny thing was, I related to so many things. I was thinking, oh my God, there's so many great things. And now with internet, to me, it's like, finally, there's one place I can go and find everything. But that's based on what I've had, like in the past. But I can imagine when you're in your early 20s, 30s, you're thinking like, so much, where do I start? I start with what I know. So it works both ways, I think. But for me, personally, that's like heaven.
Okay, we have time for one last question.
That's racist.
Okay, thank you. I hope I can manage to formulate it properly, but my thought was just about like hip hop music nowadays and how it takes, how it's present, and yeah, just like to talk about like what happens right now in the music industry. And I read also that actually now it's less and less actually black artists in the charts, but the music is still very present. So hip hop music sells really good. And for me, it seems also it's like produced, it's actually mostly, or a lot of white people, it's like produced for white people. Also, yeah, like middle class white people listening, especially in the States, I don't know, heard about that it's really very present and like kind of like, it's almost like they take away this, yeah, the black music culture. It's like, yeah, it's whitewashed actually. So I would be really interested also more to hear your thoughts about this situation of right now.
Actually, I have the same to say, but in other words. May I?
We really have time for one answer as well, so we can talk more after the debate, but it's nice that there's so much input. Please, Linde.
Okay, so just to start off, I would say like one thing, maybe a distinction we need to make is between like hip hop as like culture, as practice, pillars, you know, and like what is sells as hip hop. Because yeah, I do think that there's some element where I think there was written up maybe in the early 2000s about how mostly it's like white kids that are buying like hip hop records. But I mean, that doesn't account for like mixtapes, that doesn't account for all these different ways in which somebody can engage with hip hop. So it's part of it. You had a really good question, so I'm trying to address all the things. And I also think, I was watching, actually before this, I was watching an interview with Childish Gambino. I don't know if some of you are familiar with that artist. He also goes by the name Donald Glover. So basically he was saying that he is like tired of making hip hop now. And it's like, he's like, I love hip hop, but I want to be a pop artist because I can make more money. But the problem is, as a like young black man, they're always going to put me in this category. Or as example, like somebody like Macklemore or Iggy Azalea. Recognition.
I want to add something to that.
Okay.
The Grammys this year.
Yeah.
Were won by Macklemore and Ryan Lewis.
Not Kendrick Lamar, yeah.
And exactly. And best hip hop, Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, while Kendrick Lamar is nominated. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, to some degree, I mean, whitewashing and such. But that said, I think, you know, but at the same time, Macklemore, because he's white, there's some element that even though like both him and Childish Gambino like sing in different parts of their albums, different parts of their records, he'll always be billed also as a pop artist and not just a hip hop artist. So there's something to be said about how race always impacts like the extent to which, you know, what categories like somebody else can put on you on some level.
And to take it to a completely different content, we're talking about whitewashing. But if you look at what attracts people in general to hip hop or to rap, is the fact that you don't need to go to school, you don't need to have an instrument, have money to pay for an instrument, that sort of thing. You can do it yourself. You know, you have your voice. Talent is a good one. Even if you're not talented, you can still express yourself. So it's a music genre that speaks to a lot of people who don't have access to all that. And yeah, looking across continents, check out some stuff that goes on in Australia. Like the Aborigines there are very, very, you know, attracted to this genre, and there's a lot of stuff going on over there. So if you want to talk whitewashing and race, and that's blackwashing, that's like deep blackwashing. And there's a lot of talent out there, also Maori and dub stuff, you know, so there's a lot of different aspects, but yeah, when we talk about mainstreaming charts, that's obviously a whole different ballgame. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have to leave the debate because at one point we also want to dance, right? You can also dance and debate at the same time. One thing I just wanted to show you, we're doing this in a sort of a context of a conference in popular music and more of an academic conference. And I was sort of looking at the Rotterdamse Raad voor Kunst en Cultuur. They did a lot of research, and this is from their dance and club sector Rotterdam. And on the x-axis you see the number of non-Western visitors. You always wonder how they measure that. And then educational level is on the y-axis. And what you can, Warm is not here, I don't know why. I think it's a mistake or they forgot. But you can really see how the audience is mapped across two variables, as we sometimes say. But actually the report mentions Warm, and of course a lot has changed and a lot of good stuff is done, but it is still a predominantly white, highly educated visiting venue. It's also not the main reason, but why we thought it was nice to book Tabanka here, because we want to bridge the boundaries between different music scenes. And more importantly, which I wasn't fully aware of myself, some self-reflexivity in this case, that there is a huge Cap Verdean scene, and it's my ignorant self, of course, but I didn't really know that much about it, which of course says something about me, but maybe also about there needs some bridging going on. But the main reason, of course, is that it's just an awesome band, and I really hope you enjoy it. But before I wrap up, Julian has a couple of things to say to thank the panelists and other people involved.
So okay, we've reached the end. First, some promotion. You've gathered here with a lot of people, so many people that we couldn't fit you all on this side of the stage. You're all over there as well. We're really happy to see that. I think everyone in the panel is happy to see that, and I hope you are also happy to see that, because this shows that it's a very timely, urgent, interesting topic that everyone has to deal with at some point in their lives, I think, and some people all their lives long. If you have comments or suggestions or questions, or you want to stay up to date on this research project or anything that is sort of aligned to it, then we have media, Twitter, Facebook, and we have a website. And you can find the Twitter and the Facebook there as well. Really, if you have any suggestions, anything you would like to introduce, anything you would like to organize yourself, because we love to take the university into the city like we've done right now, let us know. Then second, we of course would like to give a major thanks to all the panel members. So Ilias, Joe, Karl, Miriam, Conchitta, Linde, and of course Patrick. Thank you so much. We have a small gift for you, but give them a round of applause again, please.